Okay, back to Monday Night Mishlei. We are up to Mishlei 16:7. Birtzos Hashem darche ish gam oivav yashlim ito. Who would like to attempt to translate that? Not the easiest, not the hardest. Jump right in.
I could try.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So with Hashem's is Russ like his want, or
Yeah,
that's Ratzon?
yeah, it's
All right.
related to its own. Yeah.
With Hashem's Russ Darche ish, like a man will be a pathway of men.
Okay, those are the individual words. It's put together slightly differently. So I'm gonna go ahead and go like this. Um, oops, sorry. When Hashem, so this is difficult to translate here. Okay, so Ariel's right that this is related to Ratzon or like Ratzah is the root. Anyone want to give other alternatives to Ritzos other than Ariel said desire? That's a no. Okay, so when Hashem, I would say either favors, approves, um, uh, endorses, okay, man's ways, or I guess a man's ways. Gam oivav yashlim ito.
Even his enemies will complete his 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 way or
Okay, so I
it.
also I think I don't know for sure. You're using mashlim the way that we usually use it, which is to complete. I see that Metzudas Tzion, and I think everyone else that I've seen says it is milashon shalom. It's from the words the expression of peace. So yashlim ito means
Will make him have peace.
will make peace
Or will give him
ito
peace
ito with him.
with him, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that is how I would translate it. Okay. Then the Targum I think is just a literal translation. So he says, Kad Isri elaka ba'archase de Gavra. I guess he changes it to singular. He says, when God favors a person's way, Af levale dvavohi nashlim le. Okay, yeah, I don't really know what the I don't think there's any real difference here, so I'm just going to delete it. Oops, sorry. Hold on just 1 second. I forgot to save the file as the right name. Okay, analysis notes. Okay, all right. Our scroll has when Hashem favors a man's ways, even his foes will make peace with him. So that's pretty much the same as we have. So I'm going to delete it. Now, Rav Hirsch says when a man's ways please God. Okay, I don't like talking about pleasing God, although that's not a bad translation. He, capital H, shall make even his enemies be at peace with him, lowercase h. Okay, so I don't know if this is just the stylistic preference of the translator of Rav Hirsch, but it does sound like Yashlim means he will make peace, whereas I would think even his enemies will make peace with him would have to be plural. So I think Rav Hirsch's is actually like the second half is truer to uh the meaning of the pasuk. In fact, I'm going to change ours. Okay, he will make his enemies make peace with him. Okay, not so it doesn't really flow off the tongue, but I think that's more make even his enemies be at peace with him. I guess be at peace. Okay, let's leave it that way. Alter says, when the Lord is pleased with the ways of man, even his enemies will make peace with him. Okay, that's pretty much the same. Okay, so let's just keep it simple. Let's keep it like this. Okay, what are the questions and problems here? Yeah, Ayala.
What does it mean for Hashem to favor a man's way, especially
Right.
in Mishlei context?
Okay, what does it mean for Hashem to favor a man's ways, especially in a Mishleic context? Okay, and now what do you mean when you say especially in a Mishleic context? Because I have my own I had my own interpretation of that.
Because usually we talk about like practical decision making, not like when Hashem is brought in, I immediately think of like the Rama Pashkacha, I guess.
Okay, so I
Or
was
I would tend to.
okay, yeah. So that's what I thought you were thinking. What I was thinking is that that let's say you saw this in the Torah, So then Hashem approving of a person's ways would probably refer to keeping mitzvos, you know? And so what does it mean in a Mishleic way? Ways of man in Mishlei are more about decisions that he makes, you know, or I shouldn't say decisions, about not legally defined ways, not the derech HaTorah, not the way of the Torah. So specifically, okay, yeah, but I think both interpretations are good. Yeah, Alex.
When it says even his enemies will be at peace with him, is that saying like Hashem is taking away the enemy's like free will to like not
Okay.
be at peace?
Okay, so I will frame this as the just a general question and then point out your specific problem, which is what, you know, how exactly does this work? Okay, what is the mechanism by which Hashem causes his enemies to make peace with him? Okay, and then how do we reconcile this with free will? Yeah.
Also, like what would the Hava mean to be?
Right. So sounds here. Yeah, I'll list this as a question. Yeah. What is the Havamina, which I will spell out what that means. Havamina, i.e., what would we have assumed were it not for this pasuk? Okay. What false assumption or I guess flawed understanding would we have of this scenario such that Shlomo needed to teach us this? Yeah, Rivki.
So I don't know if this would be included in the first question, but I'm wondering what derech actually means, because I know you
Okay, good.
mentioned, it could be Torah, but I feel like we
Yeah.
don't just necessarily assume that.
Yeah.
And a second question,
Just one second.
which
What do derech, or I guess what does derech ish, ways of a man, refer to? Yeah, Ariel, you can open up a new local yeshiva, but for all for Jews and non-Jews, instead of calling it derech Torah, call it derech ish. You know, more human, more inclusive. Yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Okay, good. Yeah, and then build up a neighborhood around it.
North Hewlett.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Rifki, go ahead.
and then the other one was, what is the, I guess, like cause and effect relationship? And I don't know, I think like you started speaking about that, but I'm not
Did I
exactly.
not? Oh yeah. Is that different than what is the mechanism by which Hashem does this? Like, how does it work practically?
I assumed it was because I assumed that was asking like kind of like more of a Bechira question as opposed to like meaning
Right.
unless you mean that.
I mean, that's how Alex asked it, in all fairness, and I kind of lumped Alex's question under the how does this work? Like, what's the cause and effect? What's the mechanism?
Okay, so meaning you would include like Hashem favoring man's ways, and then the enemy part as the
I
cause.
see what you're saying. Okay, yeah. So okay, so in other words, you're saying I intended question 3 to be just about the second half, but you're saying what is the cause and effect relationship between the two halves?
Yeah, exactly. Just because I don't necessarily see a direct correlate. Like there's so many things that could be on each side. Like why
Right.
specific this?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, next is my dad.
We have to question whether we have to deny what we see in reality in order to believe.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing. So we don't often have this question, but when we do, it's very important to ask, is this really true? Right? Seems not. Okay. And I was I'm preface here. So I'm in a different setup with my Monday Night Mishlei than I've been in for the last 4 or I guess 4 years. We've been doing this for 4 years now. Yeah, right. So I'm actually preparing this with one of my high school students a few hours before I teach the shiur. So we'll see what that does in terms of the ideas. But the way he asked it is he said, so when I asked this, I think this is what my dad meant, is like we don't see this happening in reality, right? Okay. Can they actually, let's see if you can anticipate my 10th grader's question. Can anyone think of another angle from which we can challenge the truth of this other than everyday experience? And you could just, burst in. You don't have to raise your hand for this in between question.
What does at peace with mean? Is it like a change?
What does, okay, yeah, so that is true. Let me just get this question that I just asked first. So what is another angle by which you can ask the question the truth of this? I'll give you a hint. Think Torah, think Tanakh. Okay, so I'll say the way my 10th grader said is furthermore, in the Torah, during those rare instances in which we were, in line with Hashem's favor, we didn't make peace with our enemies. What did we do? We slaughtered them, right? I mean, take the Hanukkah story. I mean, that wasn't even our highest thing, but like, all the Greeks tried to kill us, and then we, I'm not explaining what that was, but we evidently we were in line with Hashem's will, and we greatly outnumbered them and killed all of the people who were trying to kill us, right? Or let's say in the Purim story, I know that's not exactly well, actually, that's a good example, right? Is that the Jews did teshuvah, right? They fasted and they davened and they worked on themselves, and as a result, we did not make peace with the with Haman and his henchmen and all the Jews' enemies. We fought back and we killed them, right? So it doesn't seem consistent with our experience, and it doesn't seem consistent with reality, with Torah, Okay. Reza, repeat your question now.
I was wondering what does at peace mean? Like if this is a gradual change, like in the perception of the enemies, or if it's like a mass event that kind of gets them out of the way.
Okay, so where am I going to put this question? Let's put it here, which is, what does it mean to make peace with one's enemies? And then, like, what is the character and timeline of this peacemaking process? Okay, for example, gradual, sudden, one by one, all at once, etc. Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question on what you were just saying about Tanakh?
Yeah.
So it really is very possible that I just don't have a full enough understanding of Tanakh, but I thought that it was that first we had to like ask if they would like come to our understanding of like Hashem and like the world, and then you kill them.
Right. So now you're asking a third question, which is that all those cases in which we offered peace, let's say like, when Yeshua conquered the land and there were times when we were really righteous and we offered peace, what should have happened is they should have made peace with us every time. Right. Yeah. So I think that's a good other another notch in this question here. This does not seem to be true from any angle. Yeah. Yeah, Reza?
I had another question. So the
Sure.
word endorses implies that there's like a change, or like the ways are an isolated event in time and not like a characteristic of man, like an ongoing characteristic.
Okay,
So, like,
that's interesting.
It
Yeah.
kind of like places it on a timeline,
Okay, that's an interesting question. How would we formulate that question? Yeah. Okay, so let's go like this, which is the first half describing a static state or a change from unfavorable to favorable?
It might be the translation, because the word favors is different from endorses. Like endorses.
Yeah, it's very hard to get the exact translation here, so that's why we'll stay fluid in our understanding here. Ayala.
Just gonna ask what decision-making scenario this is talking about and what the
Yeah.
subject is.
That is a great
'Cause-
double question. What is the subject matter of this pasuk, and what is the decision-making scenario here? Yeah. Oh, you know what? I'm also going to add a question to Alex's question. Alex asked, "What is the Hava Amina? Like, what would we have thought?" But you could say alternatively, what is the opposite decision of the one described in the pasuk, right? Because the standard format for Mishlei is it states a foolish decision and a wise decision, or a righteous decision and a wicked decision. Here, it's just describing one side, which is all good. Well, what does the other person do, and why do they do it? Yeah, Ariel?
All right, so y'all kind of stole my question, but so I guess you could ask, well, who's the audience, and also like what's the I mean, and like who's the pasuk really referring to? Is it a tzaddik? Is it a Russia? Do we really care about that?
Okay, so who is the audience of the intended audience? And who is the pasuk talking about? Which many times will be the same, but not necessarily. Yeah. Okay, Rivki?
So another two things. One is I think I'm getting it from your little like write-up on what we were gonna learn,
Yeah.
which is what does enemies actually mean? Meaning like who
Yes.
does it include?
Okay, that's a big part of this question here with the decision-making scenario, but I think I'm going to make it a separate question because it needs to be thought about separately, which is, let's go with here. What kind of, well, what does it mean by enemies in this context? Let's say, personal enemies, bad guys, really bad guys. Like, is this going to work on the Nazis? Yeah.
And then another one, which it could be included in the decision making,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering if the ish is doing anything besides whatever like derech is in order to
Okay.
make
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I'm actually I think that's a good observation, and I'm gonna fold it into a question that I was gonna ask, which is why does the pasuk express this in a way where the man in the pasuk is totally passive, and Hashem is the one who is acting, right? It could have said, a man who walks on Hashem's path, or a man who walks in on a path that Hashem favors, right? Right. So, but instead it says Hashem, when Hashem favors this man, it doesn't even describe him as doing anything. So, and now I'll put your question there, Ricky, which is the man even doing anything other than having good paths? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Ariel.
Yeah, I guess just to add on to that line of thinking, like how would you even know
Okay.
that? How would you even know that the enemy that you have is from being in favor with God, or whatever? How would you even know you're in favor with God? Like is
Yeah.
there a
Okay.
method? I guess I guess that will really come from what does it mean to be in favor with God, but
Well, I think it's also part of the practical implementation, right?
yeah.
Like, how do you know? Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and just ask this after the practical application. Did we not write that? I guess I didn't write that. Yeah. What is the practical application and its parameters? And then, like, how do you know whether you are favored by God? By whether your ways, I should say, your ways are favored by God. Yeah. I think there's only one. I can think of two more questions. One of them can be put under another question, but one of them is a key, not a key question, but a question on on something we haven't touched on yet. Yeah, Ayala?
I don't know if this is the biggest question, but what is the gom doing?
Yeah,
even his enemies?
that's the element we haven't touched yet, which is whenever you see gam, then it's coming to include something, right? It's like presuming something and including something. So the question is, what is or who is being included with the word even? Okay. And then the last question, which is not the biggest question, I think I'll just put it here, is what is the implication of derech, right, plural, ways, as opposed to derech, okay, way, singular. Yeah, like I think we've seen a lot of pasukim that talk about man's way, but ways is is a different phrase. Okay, I think that's it. So I'm going to do what I usually do and copy and paste the pasuk into the chat, and then copy and paste the questions. This is going to take a little while. And for those who have not joined us before on Monday Night Mishlei, we will soon have our thinking minute, where we take a minute to think. And then after that, then I will call on people who think they have a fully or nearly fully baked idea. And then we'll see if people have approaches after this. Okay, 12. And then last batch of questions. Third, wait, where are we at next? 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh no, I messed up the numbers. Who was the intended? Oh, this is 13. I see. 13, 14. Did I forget a question? I think I forgot a question. I forgot question 12. That's what's missing. Yeah. Yeah. Does someone raise their hand with another question, or was that the answer? No. Okay. Okay. All right. We got our questions. Let's have our thinking minute. Okay. Anyone have anything? Oh, I have a new question actually. Which is, hold on, what was the mechanism question? Yeah, is okay, you could list this as a separate question, but I'll put it this way. Depending on what the mechanism is, why does the pasuk even need to say that Hashem will cause man's enemies to make peace with him? Why not just say he will be at peace with his enemies? Which again, I understand that that's what that's how other translators want to do it, but I think Rav Hirsch is correct. That Yashlim is singular, unless it means that man will make peace with. I don't know, yeah, I'm not sure. All right, anyway, yeah, Ariel.
All right, I don't have a fully thought out idea here, but just to make some moves here.
Sure.
Maybe you can say that, I don't know. I always like the the idea of when we're discussing Hashem here, we're always, at least in Mishlei's perspective, we're always discussing, how to live life objectively in in a positive sense. Like
Yeah.
if you're in alignment with what's good, naturally things will just fall in line.
Yeah.
That I just like that
Okay. Yeah, that is
premise.
a good framing. Yeah.
Right. So, and I guess like I want to take a stance and say that what does Hashem mean when he endorses a man's ways? I think it's in a situation where he already sees the results in his lifestyle.
Where the guy sees the results of the
Where the
lifestyle.
guy already sees it in the lifestyle, because endorses, I think the implication of favors or proves endorse, it's not like in theory he will get you these things or whatever it is. It's like, no, he's actually
Okay.
he's doing it.
Right.
You're already living it. Now the question is, fine, if he's already in that framework and he's already living that lifestyle, so then why is the person, it seems like the person is having, I don't know, doubts or second thoughts about his lifestyle. And I think maybe it's because, I don't know, maybe it's either too frightening, it's a little anxious, it could be very overwhelming or whatever it is, and or maybe he sees a lot of opposition towards that lifestyle, like human opposition, maybe. And maybe yeah, all right, because
Yeah, I like the first part a lot. I think I'm not seeing where you're going for the last part. So let me just get on the part that I understand, okay, which is that perhaps um when we speak of Hashem favoring someone's ways, we're talking about a situation in which this person's good lifestyle, or his I don't want to just say good, his okay, yeah, but I'll say Mishleic. Okay, his Mishleic lifestyle is already yielding results. That is, it's the approval. The proof is in the pudding. Okay,
Okay.
God's approval is being manifest in the results. And I'll give a proof of this, by the way, which is it's not an exact proof, but more of an example, is in the story of Cain and Hevel, of Cain and Abel. Then we are told that Vayhi miketz yamim vayave Cain mipri ha'adama mincha l'Hashem. It was at the end of some period of time that Cain brought from the earth, from the fruit of the ground, an offering to Hashem. V'Hevel hivigamhu mi bechoros tzano u'mechavehen. And Hevel also brought from the firstborns of his flock and from their choice fats. Vayisha Hashem el Hevel ve'el minchaso. And Hashem looked favorably upon Hevel and his offering. Ve'el Cain ve'el minchaso lo sha'ah. And towards Cain and his mincha, Hashem did not look favorably. So the question people ask is, how did they know whether how did Cain know that his offering was not accepted favorably and Hevel's was? So what have you assumed until now? When you read this, how did they know whose thing was accepted?
Fire came down or something.
Right. I think a lot of people imagine like a fire came down, right, and consumed it. So the Ralbag says, hold on. Gotta see which Ralbag commentary it is. Just one second. We should look up Sha'ah. No? Okay, what about? Just one second. Okay, here we go. This is Psukim 3. Oh yeah, here we go. So he says, wait, just a second. Yeah, there we go. V'hine higia ratzon mehashem yis'aleh el hevel ve'el minchaso. So the divine favor came to Hevel and to his offering. Ratzalomar. Sorry, I actually had to read this whole paragraph. V'hine kain ve'hevel hayu chachamim gedolim. Cain and Hevel were great chachamim. They were wise. Lefi mashi sipru mehem, based on what has been told of them. Okay, I don't know what he's talking about. Therefore, when they reached the outcome of their work, of their craft, their profession, each one brought from his work an offering to Hashem. And this offering was a recognition that everything that they have comes from Hashem. And he's the true cause of this product. Okay. Ulai hikrivu mehem korban lashem mipnei shem hisigu ki hakol hu mi'ito. Okay, all right, that's a separate thing. Okay, forget that. This is the main part I wanted to get to. So I think what this means is that Hevel constantly what does it mean that God favored his offering? Is that Hevel found that his malacha, his livelihood, always yielded fruit. Cain did not receive favor from Hashem. It means that he did his proper work. He was a farmer, but it didn't reach its outcome. When the rain didn't come properly. So in other words, what I'm trying to prove from here is that you can discern whether you have Hashem's favor based on the fact, is your lifestyle producing results? And like Ariel started off saying that that God designed the world in a way where if you engage it with your mind and make the right decisions, you will get the results. So if you are doing that and you're getting the results, then that means that God favored you. Yeah, Ariel, you want to add to what you're gonna say?
Yeah. I want to say that, for the second half of the pasuk, I'm not gonna try to explain the gam right now because I think that's kind of what's holding me up right now. But maybe you could say that, like, what is it's a little bit of a contradiction. When you have an enemy being at peace with you, it doesn't really make much sense. It's like,
Right.
it's a contradiction. So
Right.
that really that's not logical. It's like, it's a stira. So I'm gonna define the term peace very, very, very loosely here.
Okay, before you do that, I just want to translate your observation into a question, which I think deserves to be its own question, which is, where's the question about peace? Yeah, is what is the status of the enemy, of these enemies after the peace? Okay, are they now friends and not enemies? Okay, or are they enemies who are at peace, right? So you can conceive of, for example, let us say hypothetically Israel is involved in a conflict with people who are enemies, and we reach a peace deal. Just because we reach a peace deal does not mean that these people are our loved ones. There is such a thing as being at peace with your enemies, right? In terms of no one is actively engaging in hostility. Okay, go ahead, Arya. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, and I want to preface that what I'm about to say may lead into two different ideas. I'm not sure,
Yeah,
because whatever. But so now the question is, okay, fine. Well, what do we really mean by peace over here? So
right.
I want to say that, like, that your enemy, assuming you weren't so successful,
Yeah,
will be very justified in, like, putting you down. Like, like, if you have no results or nothing to live up to, without any evidence or proof to support what you're saying or whatever it is, like, there's really nothing to it. But an enemy can recognize his opposition's historical, his status. He could recognize his status based
right.
off of his accomplishment. Like, he can never disagree or disprove or undermine what he's accomplished. So that's a level of respect.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
when he's at peace with him, it just means he has respect for the guy. But that doesn't mean he's not your enemy.
Okay, so I think I agree in part with what you're saying. Okay, meaning I agree with this statement that I'm typing right now. The nature of the piece is that your enemy respects you, and because he sees your success, your objective success, and objective and undeniable success. But he's still your enemy. And
Yeah,
now,
meaning
yeah,
given the opportunity, if you were to provoke him, or if you were to do anything to, undermine that balance, he won't hesitate to
right,
attack you. So,
yeah,
it's like, you have to also know, this is more of like, be self-aware of your status and recognize that you're, just because he may be at peace with you doesn't really mean that he's actually at peace with you.
right. Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I like and what I think still needs work, and then I want to move on to someone else, and we could leave this on the side burner. Okay, because I think this is a good approach. The thing I agree with the mechanism that you're describing, where what I wrote here, but I still feel like that for some reason to me that does not seem stable enough or positive enough to call it making peace. Like it sounds like it's like if I have a competitor who recognizes that I am real good competition and he doesn't engage in character assassination, because that would just fall flat because everyone could see my success. I feel like that's not peace. Like if that's what Mishlei is advertising, I'm not saying it's bad, but like I don't know, when God approves of man's ways, even his enemies will make peace with him sounds grand and like an amazing promise that you're going to have shalom. So that I think that's where but I see how what you're saying flows from the idea you've developed. So I wouldn't like abandon the whole thing. Okay, Rifki, you're up.
Okay, so do you want me to say what my idea is or my potential problem with my idea first?
Whatever you feel will lead to us understanding it clearer.
Okay, so probably just saying it and then
Okay,
discussing
probably,
it.
yeah.
Okay, so what I'm thinking is that specifically like with ish, that it's speaking about like all a person's ways, but more specifically like how he interacts with others.
Mhm.
Because obviously, like, you know, when you have a pasuk that also has enemies, like I'm assuming that it's based on interactions that you've had with others.
Yeah.
So I think what the pasuk is trying to tell us is that it's almost impossible for a person to go through life and like not have tension with people. And it's using oivim as like a more, as like I guess a stronger way. Like I don't think it has to be like an enemy. Like I don't personally think, I hope that I have like actual enemies. I definitely have had times in my life where like I've had more and less tension with people on, you know, whatever. And it could go as far as actual enemies. I just don't think it has to. And so I think what it's saying here is that that's also what uses ish, is because it's not someone who's a tzaddik. Like it's not someone who's on like a level where they always have perfect interactions, but it's a model of someone who knows that they have room to improve in all areas of their life, and especially in personal relations, because it takes so much work. And that if they continuously work on themselves and their interactions with others, then they'll be able to get to a point where even if they're not like at the point of your question, like, are they friends or are they enemies? Like, are they enemies that just at peace? Even if they're not at a point where they're friends, they're at least at some sort of like, you know, peaceful relationship.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just state this in my own words, even though I was writing in my own words. One second, it's enemies. So in other words, so the ways of a man refers not to some high level of personal development and perfection and all that. It's talking about if you are good at managing your interactions, you know, and like you take care not to upset the other person, and like if something goes wrong, then you like apologize, you know, like smoothing out those ways. So then your enemies, and enemies here is not Nazis and Hamas, it is people who would be in conflict with you just due to the types of conflicts that come up in every human's life. So you're going to be able to create, maintain, sustain a peace with these types of enemies because of your ways of interacting. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah.
Okay, now what's your problem?
Yeah.
Oh, I think you froze or I froze.
So my problem
Yeah.
is, I think like the way, oh no, am I
No,
back?
there's just a little bit of delay on my side.
Hello?
But
Oh, sorry. My problem is I think that it's a little like the pasuk itself, I feel like is more like Hashem involved. And I was thinking like just the way that I naturally I think am, is that I see things in a more like holistic perspective of like Hashem set the world up in a way that like this is how nature is, and Hashem gave us bechira, like he gave us all free will. So people are going to make other people upset, but they also have the ability. I guess I'm going into a little bit of an answer here because I'm like trying to figure out, you know, how I could fix it. But I think that's like my problem, is that with Rav Hirsch's translation, it's specifically Hashem doing it as opposed to just like the way that he set up the world.
yeah. Okay, good. I like your idea. I like your problem, and I like the way that you're moving to solve it. My approach is very similar to your solution, but I think has a different starting point. Okay, so yeah, I like this approach though. Okay, let's go to Anne.
So my idea was kind of coming from more way you set it up, of saying how what can I say, the beginning where the God like approves of the ways. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, he endorses man's ways. So I was thinking that kind of brought out the idea that there's a way of, when dealing with other people, like you could say, oh, I see the answer, I see the way things are, I see my point of view, and I see where you're wrong. Versus when you talk about Hashem endorsing the ways, it's really almost like saying that the person themselves is operating with a broader perspective. In other words, when you talk about Hashem's perspective, you know, sometimes everybody's got a little bit to say that's valid,
Mhm.
and or just they have their own perspective, even if they're totally off the reservation. That's even the harder part, right? To even be able to hold, where's this person coming from when you completely disagree
Mhm.
with them?
Mhm.
And can
That's
you
interesting.
act with that? And so
Okay.
that acting from, in other words, when you're saying Hashem's adorishing it, you're having a more, I don't want to say global perspective, but a broader perspective. And then so that when you're saying that the enemies, and I liked what Rifki had to say, that in other words, this has to do with like a regular person and dealing with people, in the sense of like having conflict, then that gives you the ability to, when his, like when you have peace with, like, in other words, what's giving him the peace is not Hashem's like, oh, this guy's great, I'm going to make a nace for him, but rather the approach that he has, he's working within the actual system, not just his view and I have all the right answers view, and if people just come over to my camp, that usually creates a little more conflict for
Okay, so I really like the idea.
what I have.
Yeah. I like the idea. I'm gonna try typing it out the way I'm understanding it, and then you tell me if I'm missing anything or distorting anything. So the way most people operate is that they seek I guess they hope people's actions will be will meet their criteria. Oops, sorry. Well, what happened to the font? Their criteria for endorsement. You you must conform to me, and then things will be good. But if a person takes on the broader perspective of, would Hashem endorse, or I guess I guess the broader perspective of Hashem's endorsement standards, seeing that there is a lot of value in lots of different perspectives, then that will naturally lead him to seek out harmony with his enemies, by striving to understand the value of their perspectives. All right, so tell me what I'm getting right, wrong, missing.
Okay, so what I think is that sometimes we don't even, you're saying you could see the value in other perspectives. I think it's sometimes you just see them. So maybe you don't even agree or think it's a value, but you know what their agenda is, and you can take it into account with this person, even if it's something you don't value.
Yeah. I had an example of that today. Yeah, I'll record this. So there was a situation where we had a school retreat, and a kid was leading davening, and he started saying Tehillim for Israel after Mariv, after, at night. And both the other rabbi and I stopped him for different reasons. I think the other rabbi stopped him because we didn't have a custom to say Tehillim at night, and like the kids were already antsy. And I remembered reading something about how there are people who hold that you should not say Tehillim at night, or tachanunim at night, like supplications at night. And so I actually wanted to look into it. So I spent a long time the next week looking into it. From what I can tell now, then it is oh, and I put out a question on Facebook in a bunch of a couple different groups, and I got a lot of responses of people saying like of course you should say it at night, and no you shouldn't say it at night. I got to the perspective where it was I think I'm under the impression that it's a Kabbalistic thing to not say it at night. Okay. So I personally don't hold that. Okay. So this one guy today commented on the post and said, it's a war, man. Like you should say to him whenever you can, So I think in the past I would have been like either defensive, or I would have like tried to like argue with the guy's premises or whatever. So instead what I said is I said, look, I personally don't agree that I don't think there's a problem saying Tehillim at night. But you got to come from the perspective of these people who think that Kabbalistically it's bad to say Tehillim at night. So by their reasoning, even if their premise is wrong, their reasoning is that you're actually hurting the effort when you're saying Tehillim, And I said it would be like saying, in order to win wars, we need to fire guns. And if it's dark and stormy, we should still fire guns because we're in a war, man. Like, no, you might end up killing your own people if you fire guns there, So like so and I concluded, I said like I am, you know, I don't at all agree with the Kabbalistic view, but I don't want to straw man their approach. I want to steel man their approach and recognize that they are coming from a position and a perspective, even though they're totally wrong. But like, you know, so that's like, you know, I don't know if that fits in or if I'm just looking for an excuse to say this example, but like, you know, not agreeing with I don't find any value in the Kabbalistic view in this case, but I'm defending them because they have a position and I'm trying to like make that harmony. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Anne, go ahead.
No, I think that was totally valid and also funny.
Okay, good. Now, I think the one question I have here, so I'll tell you what I like about the creativity in what you're saying, okay, which is that I think I was assuming, and I think maybe a lot of other people were assuming that hold on, that man has his way, which is either good or bad, and if it's good, God approves of it, and if it's not, then God doesn't approve of it. I think the way you're saying it is that like man's way that is approved by God is synonymous with God's way, which I think is just like a nice, elegant definition of what it means for man's ways to be approved by God. Like when man is an extension of God's ways, you know, when man's ways are, when the personal ways that I endorse are not the ways of my ego, but the ways of God's perspective, you know, then shalom will naturally result, which I think is just a really, really nice idea. Did I have a problem or did I just talk myself out of it? I think I just talked myself out of whatever problem I had. So we'll keep it the way it is. Okay. Anyone want to add to Anne's idea before we go on? Yeah, Risa, go ahead.
This is kind of in line with it. I wrote this beforehand though. So what if making even his enemies at peace means making these enemies have the ability to understand or the premises of the actions? So it's like bringing them into God's wisdom, and that might not even be possible like in this world or in this life, but with if God endorses man's actions, then it would be in the ways of God, and then like given perfect knowledge, even the enemies would be brought into that understanding. So maybe be at peace with means like being brought into understanding.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so let me think about this for 1 second before I even finish writing it out. So the way that you are making peace with your enemies is by bringing them in line with an understanding of God's, you know, will or the standards by which God endorses stuff. And that, hold on a second. Yeah, go ahead.
So if God endorses a man's ways, then that man would have to be acting in line with God's will.
Right.
So then it would be the correct action anyway.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if man is doing it or not, it would just be correct. So then I'm wondering if the phrase he will make even his enemies be at peace with him or his actions means and at peace with would mean like bringing them into understanding given perfect knowledge. But of course that might not be possible in this world or in the context of the conflict. So I'm wondering like the at peace part, it might not even like be possible to happen in this life, but it could happen like, in a different situation.
Okay, yeah. So this may be just a matter of the premise of the type of idea that we find in the book, is that, and I'm not speaking for everyone here, but for the way we approach this book of Mishlei is that it is about decision making in this world with results in this world. There definitely are people who take it to be talking about even the next world or something like that. But I think the reason why like everyone who's suggested ideas so far is trying to like find a way for it to make peace in this world is I think that's what's driving that. I do like the bulk of your idea though, like except for that last step about the making peace thing. Oh, you know what? But it also raises a question, by the way. Okay, I'm gonna actually tack this onto my dad's question. But is this really true? Okay, I'm gonna actually make this alternative question. Alternatively, okay, is this statement of Mishlei intended to be true all the time, much of the time, or only in rare cases? Okay, and this is something we see throughout Mishlei. I was just actually talking about this in my morning Mishlei share last week. That you know, let's take other proverbs from other languages, right? So you know, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? That is intended to be always true. Okay, like you should not. That's literally what the proverb means: is that when there's smoke, there must be fire. and so you can infer that normally. Okay. Another example of a proverb is one that you say because it is generally true, you know. So early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, you know. So that's something that, like, yeah, if you have a schedule and you seize the day and you get enough sleep, then that will greatly improve your these characteristics. Okay. Is it a guarantee? No, it's not a guarantee. You could have other stuff that gets in the way, you know. And then the third style of proverb, you state it as an absolute, but really it's talking about a specific case, which is, and anyone could correct me if I'm wrong, okay, because I use this example a lot, so hopefully it's not wrong every time, is if you swim with sharks, you'll get killed, okay? So from what I understand, that's not statistically true, meaning that it's not like anyone who's ever swimming with sharks automatically gets killed. It's just that it does happen and you don't want to take that risk. And because the stakes are so high, then the author of the proverb is going to say, don't do this or else you'll get killed, you know? So there are three styles of proverbs. So that kind of mitigates my dad's question is still a good question, but this does not have to be all the time. So Resa's idea just reminded me of that, because Resa was saying, like, you know, ideally, you know, you'll bring them into the understanding, but it might not play out. And so, yeah, even if that's true, that still might be good enough to be an interpretation of the pasuk. Okay, all right. Let's go to my dad next, if he's there. Can't tell. Okay, we'll go to Ariel next.
Yeah, I was actually gonna, you know, add on to that idea, because like maybe you could say that, like, it, you know, if this guy is totally in line with like doing what's good, and like he's living like, you know, life where, you know, where it's in line with God's objective system of the world, or whatever it is, and it's not just limited to one area. It's presumably it's in all areas of his life, maybe even in having, you know, conversations with people such that he'd be able to, you know, even appease his enemies once he meets them. Maybe it's possible that, like, yeah, they're enemies now, but like they've never met me before. They don't know who I am, you know? It's like Avram Avinu. Like Avram Avinu was able to meet with totally random people that were anti his ideas, you know, and before they met, they were considered enemies, you know, in terms of like their clash of, you know, ideologies. But once he met with them, he was able to convert them, and he was able to, you know, get them to see his ways and his, you know, derech in, you know, in life.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's a good extension of what Reza is saying. Okay. Anyone else have an approach? Because if not, then I'll share my approach, and then we'll look at the commentaries. Okay, so here's the approach that I came up with my student. So the one move I want to make here first, I'll type it out after, but one move I wanted to make is that if it said derech, if it said singular way, then I would think it's talking about like your overall philosophy, lifestyle, whatever. But darche ish, like what is a thing that could be described as a way that man has lots of? It's midos. It's your character traits or your habits. Okay, so I think ways of a person refers to, I'll just say my idea. Ways of a man equals midos. Okay, you can call them habits, character traits. Okay, fine. Tendencies. Okay. Approved by Hashem. Okay, means that your midos are conducive to fulfilling Hashem's will. Okay, and the reason why I like to say conducive is I still am of the belief that there is no such thing as a good midah or a bad midah, a good trait or a bad trait, because every trait could be good or bad in the right circumstances. But there are such things as traits that on the whole are good, or traits that on the whole are bad. So for example, you know, mercy on the whole is a good thing, but having mercy on the wicked is bad. Or generosity on the whole is a good thing, but if you're generous to the point where you deplete all of your resources, then that's bad. You know, similarly, you know, haughtiness is generally a very bad thing. Okay, but you know, Chazal say that Shaul HaMelech was not haughty enough because he should have asserted himself because he was letting people trample on the kingship. You know, so there's a place for every midah. So what I mean is that if in general you've cultivated character traits and a personality where it's generally conducive to meets God's approval standard, so to speak. So then what's going to happen? God will cause you to make peace with your enemies. Now, so again, I was leaning heavily into this Rav Hirsch. Okay, so if it just said you will make peace with your enemies, to me that sounds more like what Rifki was saying, which is you'll make decisions in a way that will result in peaceful relations. Okay, but when it says Hashem will make peace with your enemies, my experience of Mishlei is that when it talks about Hashem, it's talking about some element of the circuit of the decision making scenario that is not in your control. So what I think is it's talking about something where when you have good midos, there's the good effects of your good midos, but there's some other additional effect that is not in your control, and that causes you to make peace with your enemies. Okay, now what is that? So what I think that is that if you think, so I agree with I don't think we're talking about Nazis and Hamas here. Okay, I think we're talking about like people who are personally either they don't get along with you, or they try to take advantage of you, or they clash with you, whatever it is, the type of thing that Rifki was mentioning. Okay, so I think what happens is like this: is every person has an ego. Okay. And the default response when someone does something that doesn't go in line with your will is they're doing it to me, or I'm a victim, And what you need to what you should recognize is this is ridiculous. This is just my ego. But what ends up happening is you end up like justifying it and rationalizing it in your mind, like this is a bad person, or they did this to me with intent, So I think what this is saying is like this, and this is the main idea now. Okay, this is all set up. The main idea is if you have a default mode of interacting with people with good midos, okay, you have good midos and you interact with people with good midos, you're going to build up a large reservoir of goodwill such that even when your enemy reaches a conflict point with you, instead of immediately judging you unfavorably and assuming that you're attacking them and then they're going to see you as not someone who is bad. They're going to see you as someone who is good and pleasant and is along with them. And that will extinguish the what do you call the thing that the fire spits out that could catch something else on fire? Embers are left over.
Sparks.
Sparks. There's a word I'm looking for though. Fire word. I don't know. There's a good word that I'm looking for. Whatever. It'll prevent that little, if you've ever been around a fire, right? It'll spit out like a chunk of fire, and then like that could either ignite stuff or it'll just cool off and then go out. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. So if you have a good reservoir of good midos, it'll extinguish that. Okay. And your enemies will make peace with you. And I think the reason why it says your enemies will make peace with you is they won't become your friends. Like maybe there's another pasuk about how if you have good midos, they'll become your friends. But what this means is that your interaction with them will not lead to conflict. Any conflict will rapidly resolve itself into peace. And peace being like a state of stable, like getting along with each other, Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that? I'll give an example, but yeah, Ayala.
Are you able to just repeat one more time why it's phrased as Hashem will make
Yeah, in
peace?
fact, I'm going to write this out just so it's on screen. Okay, so ways of a man equals the midos, habits, and character traits. Approved by Hashem means that your midos are conducive to fulfilling Hashem's will. The fact that this outcome is ascribed to Hashem means that there is an element that is not in your control, in your direct control, even though it is a result of your decisions. Okay, namely, okay, I'll talk about it now. So generally, if people if people clash and one of them is your enemy, your personal, your enemy, i.e., someone who doesn't get along with you, they will immediately take this egocentrically and lash out at you and blame you and ascribe a malicious intent to you, etc. But if you have built up a reservoir of good midos and goodwill, and only ever interact with everyone pleasantly, it will be very hard for even your enemy to ascribe ill intent to you. And that will result in extinguishing these fires before they start. And then to answer Ayala's question is, the reason this is ascribed to Hashem is because it's a like net effect of your midos rather than a direct decision you're making. In other words, you're not doing anything. You're passive in this circumstance. It's just that the goodwill is spilling over. And I'll ask you to do what I asked my students to do when we were going over this. I'm sure you all know someone who just all their interactions, like they just are pleasant, good-natured, good midos people that you can just never imagine them doing anything antagonistic, you know? Like I was just talking about this. Why was I talking about this on Shabbos? Oh yeah, I was talking about you know, who I used to go to for Shabbos meals, you know, and I was talking about the old crew, the old guard, you know, and so I used to go to I don't know what you called her, Ayala, but you know, Gershon, Mindy, you know, and you know, Mindy Pincus, Allah Shalom, was one of these people who like always just like nice, good midos and friendly interactions that you can just never imagine her doing or saying anything that would ever like ruffle anyone's feathers in any way at all, like just total like pleasantness, you know. And so if she scratches my car, I don't care how mad I am at the fact that my car got hit. I am not going to. That's not going to erupt into conflict. You know, that is going to sustain itself in peace. You know, cinder. Maybe that's the word. Yeah, my mom typed it in the chat. Cinder. Yeah. Okay. So Ayala, does that answer your question about why it describes it to Hashem?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Let me just think if I want to give one more example. I think that is a good example, but oh yeah, here's an example. Okay, so the student who I'm learning Mishlei with asked me to make every pasuk into an application to Magic the Gathering. Okay, so I had to like think of a scenario. So ordinarily, you know, I play in these tournaments over the summer, and ordinarily I'm a big stickler for rules when it is a formal tournament where there's cash and prizes involved, because it's not fair to me, it's not fair to anyone if people are playing fast and loose and like, you know, you let things slide, you know? So ordinarily, if there's ever any like, you know, question or like if someone asks for like to take something back, like I'll say, I'm sorry, like we'll ask a judge if you can take it back, but like, I'm not gonna like yield, you know? So I was playing with this guy at a tournament, and I made a strategic mistake, and he pointed it out to me to his detriment. And he's like, you probably didn't mean to do that. You know, and I said, oh, like, you know, and he said, you could take it back. And like, I'm just not used to that conduct from an opponent, you know? And then later on, I forgot if it was the same tournament or if it was a different tournament. I played against the same guy, and like, he made a mistake like that. And I was like, okay, I'll point it out, you know? And like, I could just see like, if we played together, what would end up happening is we would get along, we would both improve each other, and like it would end up being better for both of us, you know? And so that's not exactly the idea that I'm trying to get across in the pasuk, but you could tell from this guy, this is who he was. For him, it's a game, like, and he wants everyone to have fun, and you know, so he's just like, he's just putting that good trait out there, you know, and it's going to have these positive results, and people are going to, I'm not going to then be a stickler on rules for him if he's just trying to be nice and help me out, you know? So that was my example in class. Yeah, Ayala?
Just another clarification question on
Yeah.
why the first half is like written as when Hashem favors a person's ways instead
Yeah.
of just like a person acting, I don't know, like a different way of saying it. is it because like instead of it takes away the ego aspect because you know
Oh,
that
that's
they have
interesting.
like a higher cause
That's a nice
and they're not in it for themselves.
yeah, that's a nice stylistic answer to the question about why the man is a passive here. Is that perhaps the first half is phrased this way to highlight the diminished ego of this person, such that he doesn't spark conflicts with others. Yeah, Rifki?
So just to clarify, because I think I understood when you answered Ayala's question, but is what you're saying about like it being a net effect as opposed to direct decision making, like similar to what I was trying to say in
Yes,
to answer my own?
exactly.
Like I'm just trying
That's
to
what I
understand
meant. Where we're getting to the same. You and I got to the same place, but I had a different starting point. You're starting with the interactions with people, and honestly, your idea is very similar to mine. The only thing that led me in my direction was the why is Hashem being portrayed as the active party. And so I think like really, really nice nice how we both got to the same idea but through different like lines of reasoning, which is a good sign that like maybe we got something going for us here in this idea.
Wait, so just to make sure I really, really am
Yeah.
understanding. So it's just because the Hashem set up the world in a way where like that is a possibility, like meaning midos leading to positive interactions. Like that's what you mean by what that you're saying.
So no, what I mean, you could say that. I'm saying something slightly more local, which is like, okay, I don't want to use like magical terminology, but I will, is imagine someone who always has good midos. They'll again, I don't mean this literally. They'll develop like an aura of peace, because people will not be willing to attribute malintent to them, malicious intent to them. So I'm calling that aura of peace Hashem making peace with your enemy. And the way you were interpreting it is that God set up the world in which there can be this aura of peace that does this stuff. So I think, again, I don't think we're disagreeing in idea. I think it's just slightly in the reading of the pasuk. Yeah. And the only reason I favor mine more than yours is because to me it is more nuanced to say there's a specific thing God is doing in this circumstance, as opposed to the general God set up the world to run where mitos like have these good effects, which many times that is what it means when it says that. But like here, like it's part of the idea, Yeah, Ayala?
Just to clarify what I was saying before, I don't think I meant exactly what you wrote,
Okay,
or
sure.
if I understood it.
Yes.
Which is a good point too, I think. But it was like I was saying a little bit differently. I think that is it like because he's directed at Hashem's, like the person's goal is to do what Hashem favors, then you know that the person does not have any egotistical intentions or motives, and then anyone interacting with him is not going to get defensive and feel the need to, and then end up being upset and being an enemy of him.
So that I hear what you're saying now, and I think I don't agree with that. And the only reason I don't agree with that is I do think that you can be the way I'm defining it, which is about midos. I do think that you can have good midos and still be egotistical, doing it for self-serving reasons, and this will still work. Like, let's say, here's an example. Let's say I am cultivating chesed, like, or kindness, or mercy, or empathy. Let's say I'm doing it because I want to be popular, but I am cultivating the character trait. I think it'll still have this effect of my enemies will not be wanting to like start conflicts with me.
So I guess the question is just what that I was wondering is why does it say this instead of like tzaddik?
So for this, I think is similar to what did Rifki say this? To what Rifki said, yeah, is because I don't think you need to be a tzaddik for this to work. I think you just need to be someone who's now I'm starting to say like Rifki's actual idea. It has to do with your interactions with people, that as long as I guess I'm just saying your mitos with people, but as opposed to particular decisions with people, which might be what Rifki was saying all along. But like I think like as long as you have good relations with other people that create this like spillover effect, then it'll work. You don't need to be a tzaddik in other areas. Yeah. Okay, so let's do this. I do want to end at 8:30 tonight. So I want to read. Do I want to read one that I have not read before? Yeah, let's do one I have not read yet. Okay, I'm gonna do. Oh no. Wait. Ooh, okay. Hold on. No. We're gonna save that for later. All right, let's do the Meiri. Okay, I'm gonna read this, and I don't fully understand it. I read this once, but maybe as I read and translate it, it'll help here. Okay. So he says, "Hey, Ara Medinis." This is a hard to translate this. This is a lesson in human interaction. Okay, Medinis literally means political, but it doesn't mean political the way that politics is now. It means like the art of like living in a good society or creating a good society. This is a lesson in human interaction. Lirdov hashalom laharchik haktatos, to chase after peace and to avoid conflicts. Ukama Amar Ramzal, as Chazal said, Gadol Shalom, peace is great. Shafilu Ovid Avodah Zarah miskaperlo. I've never heard of that one before. That even an idolater achieves atonement for it. Shnemar, as it says, as it is stated, and I actually Hosea Chavor Atzamim Ephraim Hanachlo. Okay, hold on. I'm not in my house, and I don't know where I would find Tanakh unless nope. Okay, I'm gonna have to rely on All Torah. This is Hosea 4:17. Hosea. Why am I not saying Hosea? Here. Hosea 4:17. Ephraim is joined to idols, leave him alone. Okay, I don't know what the context of that is. Ephraim is joined to idols. I guess leave him alone, meaning even though he's an idolater, God is saying leave him alone, meaning leave him at peace. Okay, fine. Weird statement. The sanui hamachlokas. Okay. Disagreement. Okay, this really means like contentious disagreement. Okay, machlokas. Contentious disagreement is detestable. Shnemar, as it is stated, chalak libam ata yeshamu. Okay, this is Hosea 10:2. This is more times that I've quoted Hosea in the year. 10:2. Chalak libam ata yeshamu. Their heart is divided, now they will be found guilty. Interesting. Their heart is divided, now they will be found guilty. That's Hosea 10:2. Okay, now he uses a very interesting phrase. V'zeh. This is because shekol shalom beinehem, that anyone between whom there is peace, mischar bim zelazeh, they will become friends, v'nishmaim zelazeh, and they will be. I don't know if this means they will listen to one another, or heed one another. Umeshivim zeh miderech ra'a l'derech tova, and return one another from a bad path to a good path. Ube'es haktatos, and at I love this phrase. Okay, I don't know if he's quoting from somewhere or this is his original thing. And at a time of quarrels, kol echad echad, each and every one, holech b'shrius libo, follows the authority of his heart, ubone bama la'atmo, and builds an altar to himself. Okay, sorry, builds an altar to himself. Right. So he's saying when you are in this egocentric mode, you're going to just end up idolizing yourself, which is what we've been describing. I mean, that was touched on what Anne was describing and what I was describing of when people are in ego mode, they make their own will and their own self into the absolute measure of all things, and all things must conform to me. Valzeh Amar, regarding this, he said, "Mehoras ratos Hashem b'dracha ish latzliach b'dracha." This might be like Ariel was saying, that from the demonstration of Hashem approving of a man's ways, by making his ways successful, lo sof davar, not only will he yamid oavav imo, will he attain friends, al matzav ha'ava bris, in situations of affection and covenant. I don't know what that means. Ki gam oivav yashlimito, but even his enemies will make peace with him. Rotzlomar, meaning to say, Yavim imo b'shalom uvebris ava. They will bring him into peace and a covenant of love. Okay, so that's the Meiri's commentary. Our question, as usual, is what is his main idea? I'll read it again for those who are just listening. This is a lesson in human interaction to chase after peace and to avoid conflicts. As Chazal said, peace is great, is so great, I will say, is so great that even an idolater achieves atonement for it. As it is stated, Ephraim is joined to idols, leave him alone. Contentious disagreement is detestable. As it is stated, their heart is divided, now they will be found guilty. This is because anyone between whom there is peace, they will become friends. And they will listen to one another and return one another from a bad path to a good path. And at a time of quarrels, each and every one follows the authority of, I'll say, but at a time of quarrels, each and every one follows the authority of his heart and builds an altar to himself. Regarding this, he said that from the demonstration of Hashem approving of man's ways by making his way successful, not only will he attain friends in situations of affection and covenant, but even his enemies will make peace with him, meaning to say they will bring him into a peace and a covenant of love. Again, I don't know exactly what that last part means, but yeah, can we get his main idea? I mean, I'll make an observation here. One thing that we were putting the emphasis on making peace with your enemies. He's laying so much emphasis on the word gam also, or even, that he's saying the real idea is that that you'll make lots of friends, and even your enemies will become your friends. But what is he trying to get at here?
Is that true though?
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean, I
because you have
think
lots of friends, what makes you think? Why would your enemies just be your friends? I don't understand.
I mean, if you are, I guess it's kind of like what I was saying in the example of the tournament I was in, meaning that like, if you take it in whatever realm you want of competition, okay? If you really are competing with someone, okay, and you're poised to be enemies, but if you realize that if each of you is going to try to create the best competition possible, and you're going to push each other to your limits, you're going to end up working together to make each other better, you know? And so like if you are, let's take competition in what's a good field of tech right now? I don't know, let's say like, you know, when Microsoft and Apple, right? Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, right? Or Microsoft, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, you know? So like they were both working on similar sorts of things and they took radically different approaches and they had healthy competition, but they realized that, yeah, Apple is going to try to do something that blows Microsoft out of the water. And Microsoft is going to like innovate in response to that. And this is going to push the market and it's going to push technology, and pretty soon the technologies that each of them develop will be available to everyone, and like they're going to keep on getting better, you know? So what Miri is describing is this is happening with people as well, is that you are going to try to help each other, and you know, sorry, with your friends you're going to help each other and help each other do tshuva. And with your enemies, if your enemies see that this is a mutually beneficial relationship, then they'll want in on that action also, and they'll help you out, and you'll help each other as well, and then you'll become friends.
So, but
if I have a real world example, then I would give it. But yeah,
but he's starting off as enemies though, meaning like
starting off with enemies. Yeah, exactly.
So he's.
I have a good example. Okay, and I'm not going to record this one, and then I'll call my mom afterwards. Hold on a second. Okay, pause recording. Okay, so I forgot to record. Katasi. I'm just summarizing the Miri's idea. I have no idea how much we lost. But I don't think we lost any new ideas. So I'm saying that the Meiri's idea is peace tends to elicit mutually beneficial interactions, which lead to mutually beneficial relationships, which lead to friendship. If you seek out peace and that's your default way, then you accumulate lots of friends, and you and they will improve each other. And you might even convert personal enemies into friends when they see that mutual that opportunity for mutual benefit. Okay, so now what I'm asking is, in the derech nistar, can you take this idea and apply this to the inner self? Okay, the inner parts of yourself. So you got to think of what are the parts of myself. Who in the pasuk is it talking about as the man? Who is it talking about as the enemies? What does it mean to make peace? What does it mean for Hashem to approve of the ways? I'm just moving the pasuk down here. Oops, sorry, I'm all over the place tonight. Let me go back down. Yeah, anyone have a derech nistar approach? Oh, sorry, copying the wrong things here.
By the way,
Yeah.
you didn't miss anything because you just changed the translation.
Oh, that is important, right? So
that's all.
yeah.
But
But I
that's
did
what
change the
the main
translation.
thing
So
was.
the part
Yeah,
I
and
didn't
then-
record,
and then-
sorry, let me just say this. The part I
Okay.
didn't record, I changed the translation from
Okay.
they will bring him into peace to he will bring them into peace, which is the accurate thing. Yeah.
Okay. And Ariel and I are always from a peace and love perspective.
Yes. The quarrel was not recorded. No, there's no quarrel. Okay. So anyone have a derech nistar approach?
You said like in terms of the self, like your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I have like thoughts, but I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's like a chiddush.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, I think that it's like a very fundamental idea that if you have, I guess like not even just different values, but like obviously different parts of us have different inclinations, and
Yeah.
you could have like two different ways of how you want to go about something, or like let's say like one midah that conflicts with another midah, but the more that you improve yourself and like let's say like an example would be like through meditation, like understanding yourself and learning from your mistakes and understanding why something might have gone wrong the way it did, or like what midah contributed to what, then the more in line all your midos will be within each other, because you can't look at like a midah within a vacuum. You have to look at them like more holistically. And then like the enemy, I guess, would be like the midos. I guess enemies would be midos.
Okay. I think that is a good start. I think that starting off with what sounds like the obvious idea and then saying, okay, now what is this pasuk adding to that approach, I think is the way to go. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and translate this. Okay. So he says, near Lafarsh Birtzos. So he says, it seems that we should translate when Hashem favors. Okay. Inyan shlemus to mean perfection. Okay, al derech she'arnu b'inyan ukav as ben yirtzeh, as we explained in Mishlei 3:12. Okay, I don't know what he's referring to there. I assume he means when you're like working on improving and perfecting yourself. Okay, v'ish and a man, romez el hamischakim hamislamid, is referring to someone who makes himself wise and teaches himself. Okay, it's not clear yet. Vakara oivav, he calls his enemies hamelech hazakin ubnei chelo, the evil king and his army. Okay, which in Meiri talk, which is based on Koheles, a metaphor in Koheles, means the yetzer hara. Okay, the evil inclination, or the emotions. And the limbs of the body. Okay, so in this analogy, your emotions, your psyche is called the old king. Old because he was there from birth, whereas your intellect only comes online, around bar bat mitzvah, and king because all of your body listens to your emotions and obeys your emotions and your psyche, whereas your mind is not heated. People don't really like listen. Your psyche and your body don't obey your mind, or your body doesn't obey your mind. Okay. The lesson is to subdue your, I guess subjugate might be better. Subjugate your inclination, lahashbi or should be isa hamakev, and put to rest the sourdough starter. Okay, that's Chazal's nickname for the Yetzer Hara, for the inclination, hamaakev, which impedes you. Ulavair mechadre libo chamira debnei chela, and to he's using chametz analogies here, and to do biur chametz, okay, meaning annihilation of risen dough, from to be chametz from the chambers of your heart of the army. Okay, so that's all. Again, when Miri explains the metaphorical thing, he explains the metaphors using metaphors. Okay, so I'll have to translate this in a little while. Now here's where my idea came in. Not to utterly kill them. Okay, rak lemana'am hisnase, but only to prevent them from exalting themselves, umisgaber ahayat miskin, and overpowering the poor youth. Okay, i.e. the intellect. By giving each one its proper due. This is what it means by making peace with him. He said that the true perfection will be attained, or completion, I should say. The true completion, sorry, shleimus, yeah. I don't know what perfection or completion will come to a person when he gives each one of his limbs its proper due. Okay, so just to explain this idea in my own language here, okay, is we have an internal disadvantage, which is that our body and its desires obey the psyche and not the mind. The solution is not to go to all-out war with these enemies, okay, but instead to give each of them their proper due, which will make them able to make peace with you, and then you can exert the influence of your intellect. Okay, so the most common example of this is many diets, not keto, have built-in cheat days. Okay, so what's the idea of a cheat day? If this diet is the right diet, then why should you ever have a cheat day? So the answer is that most people, not keto, can't control what they eat all the time. There's part of them that wants donuts. There's part of them that wants, pasta, So what you do is, if you try to suppress that and keep the diet, you'll end up caving and then binging and then going off the diet. So instead what you do is you give your body and your psyche, you throw it a bone. You give it a little bit in order to not feel like it has to wage total war with your mind. And that will allow you to, again, I guess just like a regular dog, I've never had a dog, so I don't know if this is true, like you use treats to train it, and you don't make yourself into this opposing force where you just try to stamp out all the behavior they don't like, Another example I was giving when I was talking over my student is there's some people who have a hard time like sitting down and like studying for school, So what ends up happening is they either are in total laziness procrastination mode, or they force themselves to overwork and pull all-nighters, So what ends up happening is the lazy part of you feels like it has to go to all-out war. Otherwise, it's threatened that it's going to be totally denied and like, suppressed. So what you do is you set up a schedule, you work, and then you give yourself a break, or you give yourself a time to like chill out and relax, and so you're catering to the part of you that would be an enemy, but you're doing it in a way that makes peace with it and allows you to work with it in a better way. So that's the idea there. And if you approach all your emotions this way, then you'll be on the road to a good balance. And that's the whole idea of IFS. Okay, I'm not going to go into what IFS is, but that's the whole idea, is that you have parts of yourself that each wants what's best for you, but they have messed up ideas about how to get that. And instead of denying them or chastising them or labeling them as bad, you try to understand what they're trying to do for you and meet them on their own terms, and then express appreciation for that. And then that allows you to work with them and get them on your side. Okay, so let's review and we'll stop for tonight. So we had Ariel's approach, which I would like to go back to it. Maybe Ariel on the chat, if you come up with something for your approach, then we could go back to it. But I don't want to restart it now. I think it's a good approach though. A good start. Okay, we have Rivki's idea. We'll save for when I go over my idea because they're kind of fused. Anne's idea was that instead of trying to make the other person conform to your standards, you care about Hashem's standards, and then extend that perspective to them, where you recognize that each person not only just has values, but they have a perspective, and that will create a motion of seeking out harmony with other people, which will ultimately lead to getting along with them, and making peace with them, even if they're radically opposed to you. That was my understanding of Anne's idea. And Race's idea was similar for the start of bringing your understanding of God's perspective and what God endorses to your enemies. And once you're on the same page, then you'll work together within that framework. My idea and Rivki's idea had to do with the fact that if you develop good midos or good interactions with people, then this will create a net effect, an aura of goodwill and peace, where brushes with other people's egos, which could blow up in other cases into them blaming you and assigning malicious intent to you, they won't be able to do that with you, and they won't be in quarrel with you. So your history, your track record of always being nice and good and interacting with them in a pleasant way will prevent them from making these assumptions and accusations about you, and that will nip it in the bud, and you'll be at peace with them. They might even want to actively make peace with you, and certainly with your friends. Then the Meiri's idea was you should be a seeker of peace, because peace leads to mutually beneficial relationships where each person improves the other. And if you seek that out, you'll get it through a lot of friends, and maybe even your enemies will see the light and they'll join, and you guys will become mutually into some mutually beneficial arrangement, if not actual friendship. And then the Meiri's derech nistar idea is if you do this with the parts of your psyche and your body, and instead of trying to crush them, you work with them and give them their due and work together and not be threatening to them, then you can achieve inner balance and peace. Okay, nice return to Mishlei. Good idea. And I didn't say this at the beginning, but we got to remember we are in a patch of pasukim that all have to do with Hashem. So I think I'm looking forward to let's see how many more we have. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over the summer. We just did a 6th one, and then there are a couple more, not next week, but a couple more coming down the pike. So it would be good to refine those ideas. Okay, thanks for coming. And next week, as far as I know, then we'll same time, same station. Lee Netter. Okay, thanks for coming, everyone. Have a good night.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a good night.